Hello, hello, hello. How are you guys doing? I hope you are ready to have a great start to your week. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Latrice Strayton, and I'm owner of Gideon Property Services, a focused real estate group here in the Alachua County area. I'm super excited to be back with you guys again this week. So last week, we talked a little bit about days on the market, and we had an opportunity to really break that apart and figure out what are days on the market and why that's so important to our landlords. Okay, so if you didn't get a chance to see that, feel free to check that out. This week, I'm going to be talking to our residents, right? I'm talking to our residents. Now, this one I didn't necessarily plan for, but I had a lot of questions from residents and really a lot more anxiety around the rental process, right? So instead of having a lot of these smaller conversations, I wanted to be able to provide a resource for you guys to really be able to dive into and go back to on your own time whenever you're ready to get that information, okay? So a lot of the things that I'm hearing is, okay, not necessarily around finding a rental property, but really around what's expected. What do I need to have prepared? What are they looking for after I found the property that I really enjoy? And for a lot of the residents that I've been talking to, they already have a blip kind of on the screening process, whether that's in the income portion or the credited background or whatever it may be. And it's kind of like, okay, what do I do? What are they expecting from me? And that's what I want to be able to break down for you guys today is what is the expectation whenever you are renting a property? What criteria are they looking for in order for you guys to really be prepared? And the main thing that I want to be able to get across today and really be able to change your perspective on, and hopefully this helps you with all your rentals in the future, is that you are your first reference. You are your first reference. So one of the most common mistakes that I see with residents is that after, they've made certain decisions throughout a previous rental, now they have to go back, they have to get character references, they have to try to get people to kind of speak on their behalf, they have to get a guarantor, those sort of things, when I really want us to shift our focus and shift our mindset and really understand that you, as the resident, you are your first reference and you should be your best reference. Okay, so what we're going to do today is really break down a few areas. I can't cover them all, but a few areas that they are looking for, that property managers are looking for throughout the rental process and throughout that screening process, what you should kind of have a heads up about and how you can really remind yourself that you are that first reference and prepare yourself ahead of time. Okay, so one of the first areas that a landlord or a property manager is going to be looking at is income, right? Makes sense. They want to know you can pay the rent. So here in the Alachua County area, what you're generally going to find is a guideline that you need to make 3 times the monthly amount of rent. Right? Now, if any of you guys are like me, you know how to finesse your finances. So if something came up, if anything kind of went wrong or you had any surprise financial issues come up, you're going to be able to kind of work your way around some things, and rent is generally the first thing that you pay. However, for a property manager or a landlord, the main reason and the main purpose for putting those guidelines into place is really to be able to predict what may happen and to hopefully provide the best possible outcome. So by having that stipulation of 3 times the monthly rent, even with your other bills taken into consideration and some of those surprise financial obligations that come up, you still are likely to be able to pay your rental amount. Right? So a lot of times when I'm asking people about their rental budget, I see that they get offended, and I have to bring up this stipulation of 3 times the monthly rent. So I propose that instead of kind of getting offended, to be prepared and to have that number in the back of your head. So when you're calculating all your income, and that can come from different sources, whether that's your employment, child support, disability, alimony, whatever the case may be, any provable income, where you're putting all that together, make sure in planning that rental budget that it is going to be 3 times the monthly rent there. Okay, so keep that in mind. The other thing that's surrounded around income, improving your income, some places, and most places usually at least require 3 or 4 most recent pay stubs for your employment to prove that you're consistently receiving that income. Now, other places are going to go above and beyond that, and they're actually going to contact your employer, right? This is where that mindset comes in, that you are your first reference. So you have to keep that in mind, because that extends towards a lot of different aspects in your daily living, right? So a lot of people, when they go above and beyond it, they contact your employer. You have to keep in mind that, you know, even if you're on your job and you don't really like it, but you're displaying these poor work habits and you may not have your job for that long, that information also tends to come up in your screening process. So make sure that in every aspect that you are keeping in mind that you are your first reference, and then you'll be able to make sure you present yourself as your best reference whenever that time comes, okay? Another thing that they're looking at is they're looking at your previous rental history. They're looking at your previous rental history. Why is that important, right? They want to be able to see how well you took care of someone else's property. How well did you take care of someone else's property? Again, in that aspect too, they're looking at your character, and they're looking at how you dealt with certain things. So did you provide, you know, were there a lot of noise complaints? Did you put an animal in the property that shouldn't be in the property? Where you break in the lease agreement and something they found out at the end of their lease? Be very mindful of those things. And again, keep in the back of your head, you are your first reference. So those things are very, very important for those of you, right, who feel like it's the last day of your lease and you really didn't like your manager and you want to give them a piece of your mind. I would hold off on that, right? Because again, you are your first reference, and when you go to apply for your next rental property, your next place of living, that is something that is going to come up in the screening process. So I would keep that in mind as well, okay? So some other areas that they check is your credit and background. Two very key areas that's important as well, because those things are really going to tell of your history, right? So a lot of times throughout the rental and the screening process, we don't have to worry about certain things because we have the fair housing laws in place, right? So it's not like you're going to be judged based on who you are. That's what those protected classes are there for. And we'll go into the protected classes in another discussion, but that's what those are there for, to make sure that you're not judged based on who you are. However, your credit, your background, these other things that are put into place, they're not checking on who you are. They're checking on what's your history. What is your pattern of behavior, and to see if they can predict that pattern in the future and what's going to be best for their property, and to make sure that they can protect their overall profit, right? So when it comes to your credit and your background, some places are looking for a specific credit score and other places are not looking for a specific credit score, but they're all looking at that pattern, right? So even if you're paying your rent on time, but a lot of your other major bills are showing up past due, they're showing slow payments, they're showing up late, those things are all going to count negatively against you. So things like your utilities or even your phone bills, things like that show up. Again, you are your first reference and you should be your best reference. So even when you're considering items like that, keep it in mind that all of those things do show up and they factor into the screening process. Depending on the company, a lot of them have gotten a lot more thorough with these checks to ensure that they're getting quality residents into the property. So I would definitely keep that in mind. Same thing when it comes to your background. If you have evictions or anything like that on your background, guys, it will show up. So as you're making certain decisions during the rental process, those pivotal decisions, make sure you're keeping that in mind, that you are your first reference and you should be your best reference, okay? So really quickly, before I wrap up here, what do you do if something has happened in the past? Okay, you didn't have this information, but you have something that may show up and may affect you negatively. What can you do? One of the main recommendations that I provide to my residents that I work with is to write an extenuating circumstances letter. Okay, sometimes it works for places, sometimes it doesn't, but it's better to be prepared than not, right? So it's called an extenuating circumstances letter, and what that does is it gives you the opportunity again to be your first reference, okay? So if you had something go on, it's kind of like this little outlier, you know, you lost your job for a period of time, you know, your credit tanked, you weren't able to pay bills, but now you have those things back in place. Write an extenuating circumstances letter so that your landlord and your property manager have something more to look at than just those numbers that they're seeing coming back, okay? One of the last things that I'll leave you with, that just as important, you know, as we as property managers look at your previous history, your previous pattern of behavior, one of the things that you can establish is you can establish a pattern of improvement. that's what you're looking to establish, is a pattern of improvement. So the extenuating circumstances letter helps with that. If you can provide any other references, that definitely helps with that as well. But that's what you're trying to do, is provide a pattern of improvement. So if you know you've already been in a rut before, sometimes, you can't get the exact property you want at first, but continue to work on those different items so you can see, and we can see, that pattern of improvement, and that is what helps you overall. Okay, and this isn't just for renting, guys. This goes right into even purchasing your homes. You want to make sure that you're getting things lined up and you're getting them in order, because they all come full circle for you. Okay, well, that's all the tips that I have for you guys today. I didn't want to keep it too long, but if you have any other questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to let me know. But if not, until next time, I'll see you guys soon.